So I was scrolling through my feed the other night, just the usual mindless tapping, when I noticed something odd. An account I didn't recognize had liked about 50 of my old photos, all in the span of a minute. The profile picture was just a black square, no bio, no posts, just a blank void that had systematically gone through years of my life. I clicked on their followers and there was only one my ex from years ago. A shiver went down my spine. It was a small thing, but it felt like someone was peering through my window from the darkness, letting me know they were watching. It's crazy how much of our lives we put out there, isn't it? We share our vacations, our favorite cafes, our new pets, our daily routines, all for our friends and family to see. But we often forget that the internet is a vast open space, and not everyone watching has good intentions. That little digital window we open to our world can sometimes attract people who lurk in the shadows, just waiting for an opportunity. The line between a friendly connection and a dangerous obsession can be terrifyingly thin. That's what today's video is all about. We're going to be diving into 5 true, unsettling stories from people who had creepy encounters on social media. These aren't just spooky tales, they're cautionary reminders of the hidden dangers that can live behind a screen. So turn down the lights, make sure your accounts are set to private, and prepare to hear about the times when a simple friend request turned into a real-life nightmare. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place. Our first story comes from a woman named Chloe, a 22-year-old college student who, like many of us, used a popular photo-sharing app to keep up with her friends. It was her digital scrapbook, filled with pictures of her art projects, her cat, and nights out with her roommates. One evening, she got a message request from a profile she didn't recognize. The username was something generic, like ArtFan23, and the profile was private. Curiosity got the better of her, and she accepted the request. The first message popped up almost instantly. It said, "I love your work, you're incredibly talented." Chloe was flattered. As an aspiring artist, getting compliments from strangers wasn't entirely unusual, and she appreciated the encouragement. She replied with a simple "thank you so much," and thought nothing more of it. But then another message came through. "I especially loved the painting you posted on May 14th, the one with the blue and gold accents. It reminds me of the sunset over Lake Michigan." Chloe froze. That was specific, very specific. She scrolled back through her own feed to May 14th. Sure enough, there was the painting. But in the caption, she hadn't mentioned Lake Michigan or anything about sunsets. It was just a post about a new technique she was trying. A small, cold knot began to form in her stomach. How could this person know what inspired it? She hadn't told anyone that. She decided to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just a lucky guess, a coincidence. The next day, another message. "I saw you were at the Grind coffee shop today. I love their lattes." This time, the knot in her stomach tightened into a fist. She had posted a picture of her coffee cup on her story that morning, but she had been careful not to tag the location. The Grind was a small local spot, not a big chain. How could this person know exactly where she was? It was starting to feel less like a fan and more like a stalker. Chloe started to feel a creeping sense of dread every time her phone buzzed. The messages from ArtFan23 kept coming, each one more detailed and personal than the last. He commented on the new sweater she wore in a picture with friends, asking if it was cashmere. He mentioned that the street she lived on looked beautiful in the autumn, referencing a photo she'd taken from her apartment window. He was piecing together the mosaic of her life from the digital breadcrumbs she'd left behind. This is the first major red flag, when a stranger knows things they shouldn't. It's one thing to comment on a public post, but it's another thing entirely to have intimate knowledge that isn't explicitly shared. Chloe was realizing that this person wasn't just looking at her pictures, they were studying them, dissecting them for information. Every post was a clue, and this person was a detective with a disturbing obsession. She decided to confront him. "How do you know all this?" she typed, her fingers trembling slightly. "Are you following me?" The response came back instantly, and it was the thing that truly terrified her. "I just pay attention," he wrote. "I like to know everything about the artists I admire. For example, I know you live on the 3rd floor corner apartment, the one with the wind chimes." Chloe's blood ran cold. The wind chimes. They were a gift from her grandmother and hung just outside her bedroom window. They weren't visible in any of her pictures. The only way he could know about them was if he had seen them in person. If he had been standing outside her building looking up at her window, the anonymity of the internet had been shattered. This wasn't just an online creep anymore. This was someone who knew where she lived. She immediately blocked the account, her heart pounding in her chest. But the damage was done. The feeling of safety in her own home was gone. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow on the street outside made her jump. She reported the account to the platform, but it was like shouting into the void. The profile disappeared, but the fear remained. Chloe learned a hard lesson that day. The line between sharing your life and giving away your security is incredibly fine. This stranger had never made an overt threat, but his actions were a form of psychological terror, an invasion of her privacy that left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. It was a chilling reminder that even without a face or a name, a stranger online can get far too close for comfort. Our next story is about how quickly things can escalate when someone feels emboldened by the anonymity of the internet. It involves a young man named Mark who is an avid gamer. He spent a lot of his free time in the online world of a popular multiplayer game, where he was part of a guild or a team of other players. One of the members of this guild was a user who went by the handle Shadowslayer. For months, Mark and Shadowslayer were allies, fighting monsters and completing quests together. Their interactions were always friendly and focused on the game. They communicated through the game's chat function, occasionally joking around, but never sharing personal details. To Mark, Shadowslayer was just another player, a faceless avatar on his screen. But one day, Shadowslayer sent Mark a friend request on a major social media platform. Mark was a bit surprised, but he figured it was harmless. He had seen other guild members do the same, so he accepted. At first, the interactions were normal. Shadowslayer would like Mark's posts about gaming or send him memes. But then, the tone started to shift. Shadowslayer began sending Mark private messages, dozens of them a day. The messages were no longer about the game. They were deeply personal, asking Mark about his job, his family, and his relationships. Mark tried to be polite but vague, not wanting to share too much. This is where the escalation began. When Mark didn't reply fast enough, Shadowslayer would become agitated. The messages would turn from inquisitive to demanding. "Why are you ignoring me? Are you mad at me? You were online 10 minutes ago, I saw the green dot." The feeling of being watched started to creep in. Shadowslayer was monitoring his online activity, and it was making Mark deeply uncomfortable. Mark decided to create some distance. He started spending less time in the game and muted Shadowslayer's messages on social media. He hoped the guy would just get the hint and back off, but this only made things worse. Shadowslayer's messages became angry and accusatory. He started leaving aggressive comments on Mark's public posts, things that made no sense to Mark's other friends, but were clearly directed at him. The anonymity that had once seemed normal now felt menacing. Who was this person? Mark had no idea. He could be anyone, anywhere. This digital phantom was becoming a very real source of anxiety. The harassment then spilled back into the game. Shadowslayer began to sabotage their guild's missions, deliberately causing them to fail, and then blaming Mark in the group chat. He was trying to turn Mark's friends against him. It was a campaign of digital harassment. Shadowslayer created multiple fake profiles to bombard Mark with messages. Some were threatening, others were filled with bizarre, rambling accusations. The sheer volume of it was overwhelming. Mark felt like he was under siege. His online hobbies, which had once been a source of relaxation and fun, were now a source of constant stress. The breaking point came when Shadowslayer sent Mark a picture. It was a photo of the front of Mark's house. The caption read, "Nice place. Looks like your home." Mark's heart stopped. This person, this anonymous Shadowslayer, wasn't just some random person on the other side of the world. He was close. He knew where Mark lived, and he was watching him. The feeling of terror was absolute. The digital threat had just crossed the most important boundary and entered the physical world. Mark immediately called the police. He showed them the messages, the fake profiles, the picture of his house. The anonymity that had emboldened Shadowslayer also made him difficult to trace, but the police took the threat seriously. They opened an investigation and advised Mark to completely scrub his online presence. Mark had to delete accounts he'd had for years. He had to explain to his friends and family why he was suddenly disappearing from the internet. The fallout from this encounter was immense. It showed him how a seemingly harmless online friendship can mutate into a terrifying obsession, and how the shield of anonymity can encourage someone to escalate their behavior to dangerous levels, believing they'll never face any consequences. This story is a powerful reminder of why you should always, always trust your gut. It comes from a young woman named Jessica who was using a dating app. She matched with a guy named Ben whose profile seemed perfect. He was handsome, had a good job, and shared her love for hiking and dogs. Their initial conversations were great. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her. After a few days of texting, Ben suggested they meet up for coffee. Jessica was excited, but a small part of her felt hesitant. During their chats, she'd noticed a few little things that seemed slightly off. For instance, he was very evasive whenever she asked about his friends or his work. He'd change the subject or give vague answers. It was a small red flag, but she brushed it aside, telling herself he was probably just a private person. They met for coffee, and in person, Ben was just as charming as he'd been online. But the odd feeling lingered. He seemed a bit too intense, staring at her a little too long, and his compliments felt slightly over the top, almost like he was reading from a script. He also asked a lot of questions about her daily routine, what time she left for work, which gym she went to, where she usually bought her groceries. At the time, she thought he was just making conversation. After their date, the red flags started getting bigger and brighter. Ben began texting and calling her constantly. If she didn't answer right away, he'd send a barrage of messages asking where she was and what she was doing. He once joked that he'd driven by her office to see if her car was in the parking lot. Jessica felt a prickle of fear, but she told herself she was overreacting. He was just enthusiastic, right? He just really liked her. Her friends weren't so sure. When Jessica told them about Ben's behavior, they were immediately concerned. "That's not romantic, that's possessive," one friend told her. "It's creepy." But Jessica, caught up in the initial excitement of a new romance, defended him. She was ignoring that primal instinct, that little voice in the back of her head that was screaming at her to be careful. The situation came to a head about 2 weeks later. Jessica had a girls' night planned with her friends and told Ben she'd be busy. He seemed fine with it on the phone, but throughout the night, he blew up her phone with texts. When she didn't reply, he started calling. She ignored the calls, determined to enjoy her night. But when she and her friends left the restaurant, Ben was there. He was standing across the street, just watching them. Jessica's blood turned to ice. There was no way he could have known which restaurant they were at. She hadn't told him. Her friend grabbed her arm and said, "We need to go, now." They quickly got into a car and drove away, but when they looked in the rearview mirror, they saw Ben's car pull out and start following them. A wave of pure panic washed over Jessica. This was real. This was happening. Her friend, who was driving, didn't head to Jessica's apartment. Instead, she drove directly to the nearest police station. The whole way there, Ben's car stayed right behind them, its headlights like two predatory eyes in the darkness. The moment they pulled into the well-lit police station parking lot, Ben's car sped off and disappeared into the night. Inside the station, a trembling Jessica explained everything to an officer. The constant calls, the weird questions, him showing up outside the restaurant, the terrifying car chase. The officer listened patiently and told her that her instincts had been right all along. Ben's behavior was a classic pattern of stalking, and she had been right to come to them. Ignoring those initial red flags had put her in very real danger. An investigation later revealed that Ben had a history of this behavior, with restraining orders filed against him by 2 other women he had met on dating apps. He had created a new profile with a different name to continue his predatory pattern. Jessica had come dangerously close to becoming another one of his victims. Jessica's story is a chilling example of what can happen when we rationalize away the warning signs. That gut feeling, that sense of unease, is a survival mechanism. When you're dealing with people you've met online, it's the most important tool you have. The consequences of ignoring it can be far more severe than just an awkward date. They can be life-threatening. The internet can be a place of incredible support, especially for people going through a tough time. But predators know this, and they often seek out vulnerable people they can manipulate. This story is about a teenager named Liam and how he was psychologically exploited through a social media app. Liam was 16 and was struggling. His parents had recently gone through a messy divorce, and he was feeling isolated and depressed. Looking for an outlet, Liam joined an online forum for young people dealing with family issues. He started sharing his story, and he found a lot of comfort in the supportive comments from other users. One user in particular, who went by the name Wise1, seemed to really understand what he was going through. Wise1 was an older user who claimed to be a mentor, someone who had been through similar struggles and now wanted to help others. Wise1 started messaging Liam privately. At first, the messages were incredibly helpful. He offered advice, listened to Liam's problems, and made him feel seen and understood. Liam began to see Wise One as a confidant, a trusted friend in a time when he felt he had no one else to turn to. He started sharing more and more personal details about his life, his fears, and his insecurities. This is a classic grooming tactic. The predator establishes a deep emotional connection, building trust and becoming an indispensable part of the victim's life. They isolate the victim from their other support systems by positioning themselves as the only one who truly understands. Wise One slowly and methodically made Liam dependent on his approval and advice. After a few weeks of intense conversation, Wise One's tone began to change. He started asking Liam for things. It started small. He'd ask Liam to prove his trust by sharing a secret he'd never told anyone. Then, he started asking for pictures. Not inappropriate pictures at first, just photos of his room, his school, his neighborhood. He framed it as wanting to understand Liam's world better. Liam, desperate to maintain this important friendship, complied. He didn't want to disappoint the one person who seemed to care about him. But the requests soon escalated. Wise One started asking for more personal photos, pressuring Liam and using his own insecurities against him. He'd say things like, "If you really trusted me, you would do this," or "I've shared so much with you. Why can't you do this one thing for me?" This is the manipulation phase. The predator uses guilt, shame, and emotional blackmail to control the victim. Liam felt trapped. He knew it was wrong, but he was so emotionally entangled that he didn't know how to say no. He was afraid of losing the support Wise One provided, even though that support was now conditional and toxic. The psychological toll on Liam was immense. His depression worsened, and he became more withdrawn from his real-life friends and family. He was living in a constant state of anxiety, worried about Wise One's next request. The friendship that had once been his lifeline was now an anchor, dragging him down into a dark place. Thankfully, Liam's older sister noticed the drastic change in his behavior. She saw him constantly on his phone, looking stressed and secretive. One day, she gently confronted him, and a tearful Liam confessed everything. He showed her the messages, the requests, the emotional manipulation he had been enduring for months. His sister was horrified and immediately took action. They went to their parents, and together they reported Wise One's account to the platform and to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The investigation revealed that Wise One was actually a man in his 40s who had a history of targeting vulnerable teens online. He was a predator who used empathy as a weapon. Liam was lucky. He got out before the situation could escalate to physical harm, but the psychological scars remained. This story is a terrifying look at how predators use our deepest needs for connection against us, turning a safe space into a hunting ground. For our final story, I want to share one that ends not in tragedy, but with a close call. It's a story that highlights the power of being cautious and proactive about your online safety. It's about a college student named Maria who loved to travel and share her adventures online. Her social media was a vibrant collage of beautiful landscapes and exciting cityscapes from her study abroad program in Europe. Maria was savvy about her privacy settings. Her profile was private, and she only accepted follow requests from people she knew or had mutual friends with. However, one day she received a follow request from an account that looked legitimate. The user, who we'll call Alex, had a profile full of his own travel photos, and they had over 30 mutual friends from her university's study abroad community. Thinking he was another student in the program, she accepted. Alex immediately started messaging her, commenting on their shared love for travel. He seemed friendly and knowledgeable, and he even gave her a few tips for an upcoming trip she had planned to Prague. They chatted for a few days, and then Alex made a suggestion. "Hey, I'm actually going to be in Prague the same weekend you are. We should meet up and explore the city together." Maria was initially excited. It would be nice to have a travel buddy. But then, a small detail from their conversation pricked at her memory. Alex had mentioned he was studying in Spain, while her program was based in Italy. It was a bit odd that their paths would cross so perfectly. A tiny alarm bell went off in her head. Instead of immediately agreeing, she decided to do a little digging. This was her first smart move. She messaged one of the mutual friends she actually knew well. "Hey, do you know a guy named Alex from the Spain program?" Her friend replied a few minutes later. "Alex? Never heard of him. Let me check." A moment later, another message came through. "That's so weird. I don't know him, but it says we have a ton of mutual friends. I don't remember ever accepting his request. This was a huge red flag. Maria then messaged 3 more of their mutual friends. All of them gave the same reply. They didn't know who Alex was. It became clear that this Alex had systematically added dozens of students from their program to create a fake sense of legitimacy. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, using a network of unwitting friends as his camouflage. Her second smart move was to test him. She messaged Alex back. "Oh, that's so cool! Which part of Prague are you staying in? I'm trying to book my hostel now." Alex gave a vague answer, saying he hadn't decided yet but would be near the city center. Then, Maria set the trap. She told him, "Oh, my friend just recommended a great hostel called The Dancing House. I think I'll stay there." The Dancing House, for those who don't know, is a famous architectural landmark in Prague, not a hostel. Alex's reply came back almost instantly. "Oh, awesome! I've heard great things about that place. Maybe I'll see you there." And with that, Maria knew for sure he was lying. He was not a student. He was not a traveler. He was someone with a hidden agenda who had been caught in a simple lie. Her heart pounded, but she felt a sense of relief. Her caution had paid off. Maria immediately took screenshots of the entire conversation, blocked Alex on all platforms, and then did something incredibly important. She reported him. She sent a mass message to all the mutual friends, warning them about the fake account and urging them to block and report him as well. She created a firebreak, stopping the predator from being able to use her and her friends as bait for his next potential victim. We'll never know what Alex's true intentions were, but the possibilities are chilling. By listening to her intuition, doing her own verification, and refusing to take a stranger at face value, Maria avoided a potentially dangerous situation in a foreign country. Her story isn't about the monster she met, but about the monster she outsmarted. It's a powerful lesson in the importance of being skeptical, verifying information, and never being afraid to protect yourself.
The stories we've heard tonight are a stark reminder that behind the profiles, the pictures, and the perfectly curated feeds are real people. And while most of them are just like us, sharing their lives, some are hiding behind a mask of anonymity, waiting to exploit the trust we so freely give in the digital world. From the subtle invasion of privacy to outright manipulation and stalking, the dangers are real. The key takeaway from all of this is awareness. We need to be aware of the information we share, the people we interact with, and the red flags that our gut instincts are so good at pointing out. These experiences, while terrifying, are not as uncommon as we might hope. I'm sure many of you watching have your own stories of a strange DM, a fake profile, or an encounter that just felt off.
If you feel comfortable doing so, I encourage you to share your experiences in the comments below, not to spread fear, but to build a community of awareness. By sharing our stories, we can help others recognize the warning signs and protect themselves from similar situations. Let's make the comment section a resource for safety. Ultimately, social media is a tool. It can be used for incredible good, for connection, and for community. But like any tool, it can also be misused in dangerous ways, so please be careful out there. Trust your instincts, protect your personal information, and don't be afraid to hit that block and report button. Your safety is more important than anyone's feelings. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember that the most important connection you can have is the one with your own intuition. Thanks for watching.